Slipping into a factory uniform was not something anyone expected from one of the world's most influential CEOs. Not his executives, not his employees, and certainly not the public. But Elon Musk had never been one to follow expectations. That morning, he stood in front of his mirror, adjusting the fit of his new uniform, a simple blue Tesla assembly worker's outfit. His usual hoodie and jeans were gone, replaced with steel-toed boots, safety goggles perched awkwardly on his nose, and a lunchbox clutched in his hand. He took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. For a man used to standing out, blending in was a challenge. The idea had come to him during one of his late-night brainstorming sessions, when he had been reviewing reports from the factory floor. Complaints had been trickling in, workers talking about long shifts, unexplained delays, and rising frustration. He had heard enough. He knew that sitting in a boardroom, handing down directives, would not give him the answers he needed. "I have to see it for myself," he muttered, tightening the laces on his boots. "I need to understand what they go through." His advisors had spent the morning worrying over logistics, security concerns, media exposure, but none of that mattered to him. This was not about headlines or publicity. This was about the truth. Walking among his own workers. That morning, Elon Musk stepped into the Tesla Gigafactory in Sparks, Nevada, as an unknown worker. The place was alive with movement, hundreds of employees moving in organized chaos, the hum of machinery filling the air. For the first time, he saw his workforce not as numbers on a spreadsheet, but as people. Some looked exhausted, their faces lined with fatigue. Others joked and laughed, their camaraderie clear despite the grueling hours. No one paid him any attention as he joined a group heading toward the main floor. He had successfully blended in. Inside, the sheer scale of the factory was overwhelming. Conveyor belts whirred, robotic arms moved with precise efficiency, and workers moved in rhythm, every action contributing to the grand machine that built Tesla vehicles. His cover story was simple. He was Dan, a mid-level technician transferring from a smaller plant. A few quick coaching lessons had helped him sound the part. Now, he just had to act like he belonged. "All right, Dan," a voice barked. He turned to see a wiry man with a sharp, no-nonsense expression. His name tag read Todd, and judging by his stance, he had been in this business for years. "We do not have time for slow starts," Todd continued. "Get over here and shadow Eric. He will show you what to do." Elon nodded, keeping his head down. Eric, his assigned mentor, was a lean, quick-moving man in his 30s. He glanced at Elon, unimpressed. "New guy, huh?" he muttered. "Hope you are ready. This is not some cakewalk." His tone was not cruel, but it was not welcoming either. It was the voice of a man who had seen too many newcomers come and go. Elon gave a small smile. "I will do my best." But his best was about to be tested. The work was harder than he expected. The first few hours were grueling. The assembly line moved fast, demanding precision and speed. Sweat rolled down Elon's forehead as he tightened bolts, his muscles aching from the repetition. Eric watched him closely, correcting every slip-up with quick, sharp instructions. "Faster, Dan. You are slowing us down." By the end of his shift, Elon's hands were sore, his back ached, and his legs felt like they had turned to lead. But it was not the physical exhaustion that stuck with him, it was the stories. He overheard a mother working extra shifts to cover rent. A young man saving up to go back to school. A veteran quietly working through his injuries, refusing to let them slow him down. These were not just workers. They were the backbone of Tesla. The people who took his ideas and turned them into something real. But Elon had not come here just to listen, he had come to learn. Cracks in the system. By the time he arrived for his second shift, the excitement of the undercover experience had faded. The reality had set in, this work was relentless. The moment he stepped onto the floor, Eric handed him a pair of gloves. "You are on the assembly line today," he said. "Bolts on the chassis. One every 3 seconds. No time for hesitation. Elon positioned himself in line, watching as the conveyor belt carried each car frame past him. The process was fast, faster than he expected. He reached for the first bolt but fumbled, his grip slipping. The chassis moved forward before he could secure it. "Come on, Dan," Eric called out. "You are holding us back." He gritted his teeth and tried again, his fingers tightening around the wrench. The speed, the precision, it was overwhelming. But it was not just the work itself that surprised him. It was something deeper. He had built this company. He had revolutionized the industry. But standing here, sweating in the middle of his own factory, he saw something he had never seen from the boardroom. The system was flawed. And he was about to find out just how deep those flaws went. The culture of the factory was what stood out the most. Conversations buzzed around him, blending frustration with humor. "Did you hear about the new software update?" a worker muttered nearby. "It's messing with the robots again." "Yeah, and guess who is staying late to fix it?" another replied with a dry laugh. By lunchtime, Elon's muscles burned from the non-stop work, but what he had overheard was far more telling. Workers spoke in hushed tones about inconsistent scheduling, outdated equipment slowing them down, and an unrelenting pressure to meet quotas no matter what. Beneath their camaraderie was an undercurrent of frustration, something no company report could ever fully capture. He sat alone in the break room, his coffee cooling in his hands, as he listened to the chatter around him. Near the vending machines, a small group of workers whispered about an accident on the floor. "That's the third one this month," one of them said grimly. "If they do not fix that lift soon, someone is going to get seriously hurt." Elon stiffened. This was not just about efficiency or production numbers. This was about people, about their safety, their well-being. The stakes were higher than he had realized. A factory malfunction brings everything to a halt. Later that afternoon, Elon witnessed firsthand just how fragile the system was. A robotic arm in the assembly line suddenly froze mid-motion, its joints locking up with a harsh grinding noise. Red warning lights flashed as alarms blared overhead, the entire line screeching to a halt. "Not again," Eric muttered, grabbing a tool kit. Supervisors rushed in, barking orders, their voices barely rising over the alarms. "This thing has been acting up for weeks," Eric grumbled as he yanked open a maintenance panel. "But fixing it properly takes time we do not have." Elon stepped forward. "Let me help," he said, his voice steady. Eric shot him a skeptical look but nodded. For the first time since stepping onto the factory floor, Elon felt useful in a way that was familiar. Years of engineering experience kicked in as he assessed the problem. Together, they worked through the tangled mess of malfunctioning code and jammed components, finally getting the robotic arm back online. But the damage had been done. Nearly an hour of production had been lost, and the delay rippled down the line, earning glares from workers struggling to meet their targets. As the day wound down, Elon could not shake the tension that lingered in the air. Tesla was supposed to be the pinnacle of innovation. Yet, here on the factory floor, the people making it all possible felt ignored, their voices drowned out by the relentless drive for progress. The weight of the work becomes clear. By the third day, Elon had begun adjusting to the relentless pace of the factory. The work no longer felt as foreign, though his muscles still ached from the strain. His fingers had started to toughen, calloused from tightening bolts and handling heavy equipment. But it was not the physical labor that weighed on him, it was the human cost. The cracks in Tesla's well-polished image were growing more obvious. The robotic arm's malfunction was not an isolated incident. Other machines showed signs of wear, small glitches that went ignored in favor of keeping production moving. Workers compensated for these flaws with speed, adapting on the fly, but at a cost. Safety was often sacrificed for efficiency. "Dan, heads up." Elon barely had time to react before a heavy metal panel slipped from its mount. He lunged forward, catching the aluminum sheet before it crashed onto the floor. His heart pounded as he set it back in place. Nearby, a young worker named Luis let out a breath. "You are quick," he said with a tired smile. "We could use more hands like that." But Elon did not feel proud of his reflexes. He felt uneasy. How many times had something like this happened before? And how many more times would it happen if nothing changed? That afternoon, the break room was quieter than usual. Earlier, a heated argument had broken out over last-minute shift changes, leaving everyone on edge. Elon sat with Luis and a few others, listening as they vented their frustrations. "They keep saying we are part of some big mission," Luis said, nodding toward the Tesla logo on the wall. "But it does not feel like it. Feels like we are just parts. Replaceable." Another worker sighed. "The worst part? They do not listen. We have been telling them about that faulty lift for weeks. Do you think anyone upstairs cares?" Elon felt a pang of guilt. These were not just employees. They were the backbone of Tesla. They were the ones who turned visions into reality. And they were being pushed to their limits. A workplace injury hits too close to home. That evening, a worker named Tasha was injured when a piece of equipment jammed, sending a metal shard slicing across her forearm. Supervisors rushed to help, wrapping her wound in a bandage, but the look on her face was not just pain, it was frustration. "I told them this thing was acting up," she muttered through gritted teeth. No one listens until it is too late. Elon clenched his fists, his mind racing. Tesla was supposed to be a company of the future. A place where innovation thrived. But here, in the factory that built it all, the reality was far different. Workers were not just battling machines, they were battling a system that did not seem to value them. As the shift ended, Elon lingered behind, helping clean up as an excuse to think. The problems were clear. Now, he had to decide what to do about them. But how could he fix these issues without throwing the entire production system into chaos? He had come to the factory searching for answers, but now he was drowning in questions. The problems were obvious: communication breakdowns, safety hazards, and an overworked labor force, but solutions seemed impossible within the constraints of Tesla's relentless production demands. And then, just when the problem felt too big to solve, he started noticing something remarkable. The workers themselves were not just dealing with these issues, they were solving them. The workers' hidden ingenuity. By the end of the week, Elon had become more than just the new guy struggling to keep up. He was Dan, someone who worked hard, listened, and helped when it mattered. This quiet trust allowed him to witness something extraordinary: the ingenuity of the people who kept Tesla running, often despite the system they worked under. One evening, as the final shift was winding down, Elon noticed a small group of workers gathered near a malfunctioning robotic welder. The machine had been a problem for weeks, its precision slowly deteriorating to the point where it was barely usable. Instead of waiting for the repair team, who would take days to address it, the workers had taken matters into their own hands. Luis, the young man Elon had helped earlier, led the charge. With scavenged spare parts, a bit of ingenuity, and a lot of determination, they bypassed the welder's faulty circuit board. The machine sputtered, hesitated, then roared back to life, welding seams as neatly as it had on day one. "Not bad for a bunch of amateurs, huh?" Luis said, wiping grease off his hands with a grin. Elon could not hide his amazement. "How did you figure that out?" Luis shrugged. "You spend enough time around these machines, you start to see patterns. Management does not have time for this stuff, so we figure it out ourselves." And that was just the beginning. Over the next few days, Elon observed more moments of quiet brilliance. Workers redesigning their tools to make tasks easier. Small but effective tweaks to the assembly line that saved precious seconds. Even an improvised software fix that reduced downtime on one of the robots. These were not just complaints, they were solutions. But there was a disconnect. These ideas rarely made it beyond the factory floor. Supervisors were too focused on hitting quotas, and the workers felt like no one was listening. The turning point came during an informal gathering in the break room. A small group had gathered, brainstorming ways to fix recurring issues on the line. If we tweak the conveyor timing, we could probably shave 5 minutes off each shift, one worker suggested. Yeah, but who is going to listen? Another countered. We have tried before. Nobody cares. Elon finally spoke up. What if someone did listen? What if you had a direct line to the top? The room fell silent. Workers exchanged skeptical glances. Luis shook his head. That is a nice thought, Dan. But that is not how things work around here. Elon did not argue. But the gears in his mind were already turning. The workers were not the problem, they were the solution. They had the ideas, the experience, and the drive to improve Tesla from the inside out. All they needed was a voice. A platform. And now, it was time to tell them who he really was. Revealing the truth. The factory's morning meeting was routine. Workers stood shoulder to shoulder as supervisors ran through updates and production goals. Machines hummed in the background, the day about to begin. It was the perfect moment for what Elon had planned. He stood at the back of the room, still dressed in his worker's uniform, safety goggles perched on his head. Luis nudged him. You good, Dan? You look nervous. Elon forced a tight smile. Yeah. Just thinking about something big. When the supervisors finished, he took a deep breath and stepped forward. His heart pounded in a way it had not in years. He had led countless board meetings, launched billion-dollar products, and stood in front of cameras broadcasting to the world. But this moment felt different. It was raw. Unfiltered. Personal. He cleared his throat. Before we get to work, I need to say something. The murmurs quieted. Heads turned. My name is not Dan. A ripple of confusion spread through the room. Luis frowned. What are you talking about? Elon took another breath. My name is Elon Musk. I have been working alongside you for the past week to see what life is really like on this floor. To see what you go through, what you face every day. For a moment, silence. Then the reactions came, a mix of gasps, laughter, and disbelieving whispers. No way. This is a joke, right? Elon removed his safety goggles and straightened his posture. He was not joking. And what happened next would change everything. I came here because I needed to understand what is really happening in this factory, not from reports or meetings, but from you. Because you are the ones who make Tesla what it is. The room remained silent, every worker's eyes fixed on him. Luis, still trying to process what he had just heard, stared at Elon in disbelief. Wait, you are serious? You are actually him? Elon gave a small nod. Yes. And I have learned more in the past week than I have in years. I have seen the challenges you face, broken equipment, unrealistic expectations, and a system that does not always value your input. But I have also seen your ingenuity, your resilience, and your ability to solve problems in ways no one else could. The tension in the room began to shift. The workers exchanged uncertain glances, their skepticism giving way to something else, curiosity, maybe even hope. Elon's voice grew stronger. What I saw this week is something I cannot ignore. You are not just employees. You are innovators, problem solvers, and the heart of this company. And starting today, things are going to change. A hand shot up from the back of the room. Like what? A woman called out. For starters, Elon said, meeting her gaze, we are going to create a direct line of communication between the factory floor and the leadership team. Your ideas, your concerns, they need to be heard. And we are going to fix the equipment issues you have been dealing with. No more shortcuts. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd, this time with something that had been missing before, cautious optimism. Louis stepped forward, still looking stunned but now smiling. "You really mean it?" "I do," Elon said. "But I cannot do it alone. I need your help to make this place as innovative and efficient as we all know it can be." A moment of silence stretched across the room. Then, someone clapped. Another followed. Within seconds, the room erupted in applause, not the kind given out of obligation, but real, genuine appreciation. For the first time, many of them felt seen. Turning words into action. The reveal was just the beginning. Now came the hard part, proving that these promises were not just words. Elon did not walk away after his announcement. He stayed, listening to workers, addressing concerns, and most importantly, setting real change into motion. The first priority was safety. The malfunctioning lift that had injured Tasha was repaired immediately, and Elon sent a dedicated safety audit team across the factory to identify other hazards. Workers who had once resigned themselves to dangerous conditions now felt empowered to speak up, knowing that someone was actually listening. But it was not just about fixing what was broken, it was about making things better. Elon introduced a simple but revolutionary system, an open innovation forum. Workers could submit ideas directly to management, no red tape, no middlemen, no delays. Within days, the submissions poured in. Louis's idea to adjust the conveyor belt timing was implemented, shaving valuable minutes off each shift. Tasha suggested a redesign for a cumbersome tool that had been causing strain, and soon, workers had an easier, more efficient way to complete tasks. Ideas that had once died in the break room now had a direct path to the top. The change in morale was immediate. Workers who had once felt like replaceable cogs in a machine now saw themselves as vital contributors to Tesla's mission. Their ideas mattered. Their voices were being heard. And most importantly, they could see the results of their input in real time. But the impact did not stop at the factory. A shift in leadership. For Elon, the experience left a profound mark. When he returned to his executive role, he carried the lessons of the factory floor with him. During a company-wide meeting, he spoke openly about his time undercover. "1 week on the factory floor taught me more about leadership than years in the boardroom," he said. Innovation does not just come from the top. It comes from every level, especially from those closest to the work. As leaders, our job is not just to guide. It is to listen. To empower. To adapt. The message resonated throughout Tesla and beyond. Elon's undercover mission became a defining moment in the company's history, a story employees told with pride and one that sparked discussions in boardrooms across industries. Other companies took notice, rethinking their own approaches to leadership and workplace culture. And for the workers at the Tesla factory, the week Dan spent among them was not something they would forget. For many, it was a reminder that their voices mattered. That change, no matter how big the system, was possible. A lesson in leadership. This story is not just about one man or one company. It is about the power of listening. The importance of valuing every individual. And the strength that comes from working together. Because true leadership is not about standing above, it is about standing beside the people who make progress possible.